There we go.
Hey Larry, how are you today? So I was doing a interview for a organizational management class, and I just wanted to speak to you about some of your experiences as being a manager. I had a few questions on your leadership style, personality management, things like that. But
Okay.
if you don't mind, just give us a short introduction of kind of your management background and all, and we can start.
Very good. No, I appreciate that. Gosh, I've been involved in a management role for probably 34 years now since I graduated college. I spent 24 years managing big box retail, and then the last 10 years running my financial advisor practice. So, total of 34 years, lots of different stories and lots of different situations. So, I'm hoping I can help you out.
Okay, well, like I said, I got a few questions prepared. Let me start off here. And um, do you feel there's a difference between management and leadership, or are they essentially the same thing?
I think they should be the same thing. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, they're not. I think people assume a manager is the one that directs people and points and gives direction rather than really what a manager should be is the leader role where they're setting the example, finding motivations, and leading the team through there instead of pushing them through. It's more of a pull instead of a push. And I think that's the difference. I think that's the biggest mistake people make today is they try to be a manager that just directs and points and tells people what to do rather than leading them as a team. So yeah, it's a good question.
Mhm. So, how would you describe your leadership style, and how has it evolved throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Experience is a great teacher, and talking to people and learning people. What I think I am today is well, the way I approach it is I try to go to the people that I'm responsible for and find out what motivates them about why they're there, why they're in the business, not just the money piece, but what's their situation? Is it they've got a family to provide for? Are they doing this job just for some extra income? Do they have kids? I try to find whatever it is their motivation is, and then tap into that, and then work with them in order to get the goal in place. Right. So we work on what the goals are, collaborate, and then we'll go through this thing together. So it's more of a joint team effort rather than me sitting down and just giving directions on where they're going. And over the years, I've learned that different people react differently to different motivations, depending on whatever the personality is. Good example of personality styles is that DISC profile. So the D, the I, the S, and the C personalities all react differently to direction or leadership. So if it's a D personality, they're very cut to the chase. Give me what I need to know. Let me go do our thing. If I'm talking to a C personality, I need to give them all the details and the processes. If I'm talking to an I need to talk to them why it's a good idea to do it this way. If I'm talking to an S personality, I need to understand that I can talk to them, but also need to tell them why it's stable or help them figure out their maybe bumps in the road. So some people I can just give a little bit of information to and let them run with it. Other people I've got to be more detailed with. I just have to figure out, and I've learned I've got to figure out what is their communication style. And if I can do that, then we have a better relationship and the results end up being better in the end.
Appreciate that. That's very informative. Um, how do you balance task-oriented leadership, like meeting goals, deadlines, with people-oriented leadership, like supporting and motivating the team? How do you kind of balance the people versus the task?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. It's really important. So typically when we have the tasks, I'll sit down with the group that I'm working with and go through it and get their buy-in on the idea behind the task first so that they become a part of the process. It's not me directing, it's they're a part of it at that point. So if I can find a way to tie them into those tasks and help them understand the why behind it, instead of just giving them a direction to go do something, if they understand the why and they feel like they're a part of it, usually the motivation piece comes easy then because they feel like they're a part of it. I'll give an example. Years ago, when I was a manager at Home Depot, we opened up three different stores, and we had department managers, and we would have literally have department manager meetings on a weekly basis, and ask them to explain their business, go through their P&L, talked about sales goals. So they then took the lead in that in presenting the information to us as the store management group. So they took ownership into it. So then I would take their ideas. We would talk about whatever it is, help them collaborate that. But then their ideas became what our ideas were. So they were on board with us. So we didn't have to find another way to motivate them. We collaborated together. They agreed on the ideas, and then they took it and owned their business from that point forward. And then they worked with their staff to get where they needed to be. So, yeah, trying to get the group involved with the idea and why behind the idea, that usually they'll become motivated to be more involved in getting it done.
Staying with talking about groups versus individual, talking about teams, how do you approach managing team members with different personalities and work styles? How do you kind of start working to encourage cohesion, collaboration, knowledge sharing, and trust across teams and departments?
Yeah, that's a big piece. I think having the group together is important, and talking to them, the individual stuff is on the side. I'll talk to them individually to get to know them personally and find out what's going on with them. But I think having them together and talking to the group as a whole, but then talking to the individuals in the group too while we're there. Like if I'm talking to, Johnny over here and Sally's over here, I'm having a good conversation. I'm really getting to learn more about Johnny. Sally hears it, and I'm doing the same thing with Sally, and then Johnny hears it. And then they get to understand each other better that way. And once they understand each other better, I think they have a better relationship. So the group works more cohesively, and it's not people pointing fingers and somebody's upset with that person or somebody's upset with that person. Usually that happens when you have people that are upset with each other, is when there's direction given to this person and direction given to this person, but you haven't done it together and there's no real understanding behind why. So if you do it as a group, usually the group works and functions more efficiently. So, yeah.
Thank you. What about when you're dealing with how do you ensure that an introverted and an extroverted employees both have a chance to contribute effectively to the group?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a book, Good to Great, and it talks about having the right person on the right seat of the bus. So having an extroverted person in the back in the file cabinets is probably not the best role for that person. And if I've got an introvert, I probably don't want them to be the face of the business because they're out of their comfort zone, right? So I've got to have the right person in the right place. And then again, going back to finding their motivations, encouraging them, praise in public, correct them in private, those sorts of deals, and then having regular follow-up meetings scheduled to help coach them and to give feedback, I think is a good way to motivate those people to do the things that they need to do.
You give an example of how you productively leverage relationships or networks within an organization to achieve a goal.
Networks within an organization. Okay, so with my current role with Edward Jones, I do work. I have a role within the regional leadership group. So my responsibility is I work with the certain levels within the business. So we have a monthly Zoom call. We get together and talk about the business and where we're at and ways to help motivate them and get them where they need to be. Quarterly, we'll get together and have like a lunch event. So we have more of that personal connection to talk about how we're going to do those sorts of things. And then I typically tailor the message to where they are in the business. So I'm talking to a new person. We're focusing more on establishing procedures and the process of the business. I'm talking to somebody further down the business. We're talking more about the businesses that we're talking to, the type of clients that we're talking to, rather than the people that are new in the business. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then kind of just going down that path there, talking about like human capital development. How do you identify a high potential employee out of those groups, and how do you support their growth?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So kind of goes back to the hiring process. And so many companies have applications with questions and a series of questions that are very action oriented, and those are fine. I take a different approach. When I interview people, I'll go through those questions and ask them, but I'm looking more at their personality, their style, and seeing how they react with me. I get a better read on them as a person, and that usually tells me what kind of a leader, what kind of an employee, what their performance might look like based on how they react to questions, how prepared they were, how they present themselves, all of those pieces. So I usually start at the very beginning by setting good expectations, trying to get a read on their personalities, and then I can help coach them. And then we put them through, just like with what I'm doing now in the performance group. When we have new advisors, we set expectations early on, but then we help coach them through it. And it's not more of a top down, it's more of a, I'm lifting you up and trying to support you. And I think if the employee or the team member understands we're there to support and lift, help you get better, then I think they feel better about receiving whatever information I'm trying to give them. And I think they are better off, and I think the organization is better off. So it's just the approach of we're really trying to support you rather than trying to drag you, pull you, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what role do you think continuous learning and professional development play in team performance?
Oh, it's a huge piece of what we do. Um, I know for myself, I try to find something every day to read or to watch or to listen to try to get better. Not only does it help take the monotony out of what we do, but as you gain those skills, you become better at your craft and you become more of an owner in what you're doing, and you feel good about it. And then you kind of like to show people how effective you are. So when you're learning, you're getting better, you feel better about your business, you are getting better, you're serving your clients, you're serving your team better. So I've always encouraged people to try to read, find something every day to kind of, we got to feed our brains, right? We got to keep feeding ourselves. Otherwise, you kind of get stagnant and you fall behind and get bored with what you're doing. So try to feed your brain and get some good energy every day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and I guess kind of, what about for the culture of your organizations and things? How do you foster inclusivity and respect for diverse perspectives within your team?
So will, if I'm talking to the group, I will intentionally pick people out of the group and ask for feedback so that they understand it's not just me giving them information. I want their feedback. And so by asking somebody an opinion, I think that helps them feel value and feels like they're part of the group. It gives them ownership in the business. And so I'll ask, Susie or Johnny, and they'll say, Johnny, what do you think about Susie saying this? How does that affect it? And I'll get their feedback. So instead of me just regurgitating information to them, by me asking questions, it gets their buy-in, and that they feel like they're more part of the group at that point.
Hmm. And Larry, I think I have time for one more question, but in your view, what's the manager's role in shaping and sustaining an organizational culture?
I think the manager or the leader's role is really to help establish goals for not only the business but the individual pieces in the organization. So if I've got a business, I'm setting business goals, whether it's numbers or sales or what have you, but then I'm also going to talk to each of the individuals to talk about what their expectations are. And usually the question I'll ask when I'm doing reviews with associates is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Because I want them thinking about that as well, right? I mean, are they going to stay there for the next 10 years? Or they have other plans? I want to help give them ideas on where they could go from here. So that's the biggest thing I think as a manager or leader is to establish the business goals, help the individual team members figure out what their goals may be, and try to help them figure a path to get to where they're supposed to be.
I appreciate it. Hey, and I
Yeah,
also appreciate the time you made to sit down and talk with me and my group today.
absolutely.
It's really informative, and like I said, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was good. I appreciate you. Thanks for having
So,
me.
thank you, Larry.
Thanks.